We have got to address the real problem, because once a person has been a victim of this kind of crime, they're really changed in a way that creates an ongoing harm for society. Judges are very afraid of the defendants and their lawyers, and whoever screams the loudest gets what they want that day. It takes a lot of courage to protect children. It shouldn't take an act of Congress, but it seems like that's what it takes.
Here on our podcast, we have JoDee Neal, who is a longtime 20-year career attorney, prosecutor, who was also chief of crimes against children.
Crimes against children,
yes. Turned author. This book is not only a memoir, but it is also a tool for others who have maybe been victimized by horrible, horrific sexual abuse. Is that correct?
That's correct. Outcry Witness is a former prosecutor's guide to healing and justice after sexual violence.
You've worked in some of the darkest cases. You have seen horrific and heard horrific stories. You have represented young children who have been sexually abused by the most heinous evil people on the planet. What originally pulled you towards crimes against children specifically?
I was assigned. And I was a good little soldier, and I wasn't going to say no. It had been a division that had a lot of attrition, and I was in the white-collar crimes division during the mortgage fraud crisis in a very cold office reading actual paper, like one by one. And I got a knock, and they said, "Hey, we want you to come and be in crimes against children." And I shuddered on the inside, because I had watched them try those cases before. There was a woman who had cut the arms off her baby in Plano, and I watched that whole trial in the old Collin County Courthouse, the one that was on McDonald Street, remember?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was really scared, but they took me to the first assistant's office, and he said, if you want to try capital cases, which he did all the death penalty cases. He said, this is, probably your best chance at getting to be on those teams. And I said, okay. I wasn't going to turn down the assignment, so I just took up my sword and moved along.
Speaking of that mother, was that one of the worst cases that you have ever experienced?
It was
having to be involved in?
Oh, it was horrible. I wasn't on that one. I was watching in the audience, but I did do the Padmaja and Jetty case, where she threw her baby off the balcony of the house. And the baby ended up being okay, but there was a bruise on the back of the baby's head. And she got 3 years to do plus probation. And that was a really sad one. I have a lot of empathy for her now that I'm a mother.
So crimes against children cases, it's not just sexual assault at all. It is any kind of violent crime involving children.
Injury to a child, specifically children under 6.
Mm-hmm.
Under 6 are the capital murder cases. I did one of those too. It was called a mini cap, where it's an automatic life in prison. That was a really tragic case. It's a lot like the one that's happening in Fort Worth right now. I forget. I'm sorry. I'm blanking on her name. Mm-hmm. It's so tragic. Anyways, so, and then injury to a child cases. Mm-hmm. So, there was violence and sexual violence.
So when you became chief, what was that like? And how long were you chief of crimes against children?
I was recruited to start the very first crimes against children division in Grayson County.
Where's Grayson County?
Sherman.
Right, Sherman.
It was, I guess, September of 2024, I was recruited. I say that again. I wasn't looking for the work. We'll put it that way. I was really trying to get out of law. I had done an interview with JP Morgan to be a private banker, even though I have no finance.
Wow.
I was trying to get out of law. Anyways, so I started in November of 2024 when the elected was elected. And I went about 4.5 months, maybe, before I just...
What was the hardest part of being chief? And why was it different than being an associate attorney trying cases, prosecuted cases?
The problem was the infrastructure in the county. Before, in Collin County, they had a special rocket docket. They had a special crimes against children administration, basically, to where a judge would keep things on track. Cases didn't go more than 2 years. They brought in visiting judges, visiting court reporters, and it was really a system. The Collin County Children's Advocacy Center was a big part of it. And in Grayson, it's just a rapidly growing county, doesn't have the infrastructure, doesn't have the buy-in from the judges. And I feel like the operation was kind of sprung on the county as a political motive, and no one was prepared to support a new division. And so I got up there with
So it was a new division.
Yeah, new division, and I had no secretary, no investigator. Could not get this 9-year-old case to trial, and I concluded that I would end up harming more kids than helping kids by being in that role. So I left.
So there were children waiting for justice for far too long. Is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, there were so many children waiting for justice. There weren't even lists of how many there were. I mean, it's a paper file system, and I had no reports. I couldn't get a list together. It was really bad.
And there was someone recently who was able to do an open records and find your letter of, it was a resignation letter, and it was about a 4-page document that was public record. How was it public record? And then she was able to post it to expose that perhaps these issues were exposed by you then with your recommendations, and does not feel, I think the post was basically indicating that they are still crippled with a defunct system.
Yeah. I did a 5-page resignation letter. I sent it to all the county officials, including the DA, the first assistant, the county judge, all the commissioners. And, it was like, look, I came here to work. I did a ton of work while I was there. I pled a bunch of cases. I had some beautiful experiences with victims and their families, but there's more than I could fix. I mean, I just had to come to grips with the fact that one person can't change a system. To change a system or to improve a system, you have to organize. You have to have buy-in from the elected officials, including the judiciary. And there was just far too much working against me to make it worth the 90-minute drive every day. And I had to start my own law practice on the side to make up for the salary that they couldn't pay me. I mean, I felt like I was privately funding county government, and it had gone too far. So I got out while I could. I got out while I was ahead.
While you were a decorated prosecutor, how many trials do you think you've tried?
I've tried more than 100 cases to juries in my 20-year career. I quit counting at a certain point.
So what finally pushed you to go public as a survivor yourself?
I already had the publisher book deal before I started Grayson County. I had hit my rock bottom, something unrelated, an employment conflict. And I just could not understand why I was still so unhappy despite having so much, beautiful children, a house, being a lawyer. But I knew why. I knew it's because I had this thing inside of me that needed to be released. I really followed in the steps of all the children that I worked with and started out saying it to myself. This is real. This happened to me. I wrote a 5-page document, and then I, on a whim, contacted a publisher who I followed on LinkedIn and said, hey, would you ever be interested in a book written by a former CAC prosecutor about being a survivor? And they said yes. And if they had said no, I never would have kept going. I mean,
well, this book, Outcry Witness, is such a powerful book.
Thank you.
And I really want to get into kind of the guts of the book and what you've learned. In fact, you describe writing this book while still in the fire.
Yeah.
Not from the other side of healing. What was that like? As you're writing, you're experiencing the trauma? Is that what it was like?
Yeah, I had to go through all my old journals. So I kept pretty good records when I was a prosecutor. And even when I was in my early teens, I kept pretty good records. And so I went and looked at my old journals, and yeah, I just cried so much and really grieved.
While writing the book.
Yep.
So many tears shed, and as you're outpouring, reliving the experience, do you feel like you're re-traumatizing yourself, or is it you're processing the trauma you didn't really process before?
It's processing the trauma that you had not processed before. And the reason why it worked in this instance is because I hired a collaborator. And so I wasn't alone when I was writing it. And we know from trauma research, I'm a big follower of Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote Body Keeps the Score. And so he and Dr. Stephen Porges, who has pioneered polyvagal theory, I'm taking their certificate in trauma studies. It's a 7-month course. And they say that what helps a person who's survived a violent offense is when they say what happened to them in the presence of a witness who is competent to hold space. That's basically when reality integrates. And so as I was writing the book, I, was communicating with my ghostwriter, my collaborator. Her name is Allie Anderson. I can't call her a ghostwriter, not after what we've been through together. And so, I believe you. I'm sorry. That is terrible. All those, validating statements that helped me to heal, then move to the next one, do the same thing, heal, read some literature, incorporate some data and get through the draft in about 6 months.
Polyvagal theory. Okay, so the book Body Keeps the Score. I know that book specifically because somehow my 13-year-old daughter loves to read and she's really into psychology. And she went to the bookstore with my aunt and she bought that book and she read the entire book one summer.
Oh,
so
my gosh.
She's been telling me about the book, pieces of it.
She's precocious.
And she is definitely, but that's how I knew. And then my aunt was telling me that was, one of the primary books for anyone in, psychology or addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it's the kind of the 101.
Yeah.
For the, well, what was that? It was the
polyvagal theory.
So tell me more about that.
That one I'm still working on. It's a nervous system response to stress and trauma.
Okay.
And basically settling down your polyvagal system.
Because EMDR is really what you focus in on your book, correct?
Yeah, EMDR really helped me get my book out. Because I had been working for a while to clear the trauma through EMDR. And it was because I had done that I was able to make the connection.
How would you describe EMDR for those that don't know?
EMDR is like taking a deep breath after a panic attack. It's like a relief. It is sort of like erasing a whiteboard. You go back to the trauma in a way that makes it seem less scary.
And is it for any kind of trauma or specifically like physical trauma to the body? Or could it be somebody grieving, like thinking of like the parents from Camp Mystic, for example? Would EMDR maybe help that process of grief?
I would say so, because what you do is you go back to the moment when you feel the most powerless. And so that's called the target. And in the sexual abuse world, you go back to the, event when it happened. But you can also, in an employment context, you can go back to your annual review that didn't go the way you wanted it to.
Right.
And be like, why did I feel so powerless in this instance? And so you can do EMDR on lots of different types of targets. And I would imagine for a July 4th flood parent, it would be when you were wondering where your child was and couldn't get answers.
And what happened. So you talk a lot about taking power back for survivors. What does that actually look like inside the legal system that often can re-traumatize people?
That's a really good question. And it's still a tough pill to swallow, because I encourage survivors to try a lot of different things before getting involved with the legal system.
Okay.
Sometimes you have to. If it's a child, no choice. You've got to follow the protocols and report the crime. If you're an adult, though, I was talking with a potential client yesterday, and I'm like, do you think it might heal you to maybe go on a podcast and say the truth about what happened to you in the presence of a competent witness? Is it wanting to be seen that you want more than going to court? Because that's not a fun game to play. Like, I wouldn't get involved in the legal system unless you really need to. There's a compelling reason to put other victims on notice, to warn other people. It's not just like, I need to heal, I'm going to go this direction. Like, maybe there's something else.
What's something that the public consistently gets wrong about the trauma and how it shows up in courtrooms?
I would say people are very unaware that they have a bias. Well, not even really a bias. It's really a fear of confronting these issues because they're so sensitive. We have a lot of people come into jury selection and say, oh, I can't be on this kind of a case. I have kids. I'm a grandma. I have a niece that I love. It's like, hold up. Okay, we have to exercise some emotional discipline here. Are you going to convict an innocent person? No one wants to do that. Doesn't matter how much you hate pedophiles. No one wants to convict an innocent person.
Right.
So one, I need you to commit that you're here to listen, to be a fair and impartial juror. And then two, do you think you know more law than the judge? Of course not. So if the judge gives you a mini law book telling you can't hold the defendant's failure to testify against him, are you going to not follow the law? They're like, no. Okay. You can be a juror. You just love kids a lot, and that's okay. We want people who love kids to sit as jurors on child abuse cases.
So that's how you decipher through the bias and really educating them that maybe you aren't biased. You just have passionate feelings about protecting children or not wanting to maybe implicate someone unfairly.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that's going to happen here once you have to follow the law with the jury charge the judge is going to give you.
Right. And people can't can't look away because it's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's gotten to the point where the headlines are so constant.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even share everything I see. I mean, I would be sharing 50 stories a day. Because
What do you mean by that?
child abuse stories are in the news constantly.
Right.
Teachers, coaches,
Right.
parents. I
Does
mean,
it seem like it's more now than it has been before, or is that just
Yes.
because information is now more readily available and shared so quickly?
no, I think there's more. I think there's definitely more.
More
especially-
victims now and more sexual abuse going on?
Yes.
Why do you think that
Especially-
is?
Especially when you factor in the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Like the data that I use most commonly is the CDC data, and that's like actual person-on-person abuse.
Okay.
1 in 4 little girls before the age of 18 will be sexually abused. 1 in 13 boys is the CDC data figure from 2004. 45% of all American women, so it's 57,748,000, will survive contact sexual violence in their lifetime. 1 in 6 men. None of this includes online.
And so in your book, you're talking about not who has it happened to, but who has it not happened to. Is that where we stand now?
Basically,
And why do you think it's increased more?
we live in a time where perpetrators have access to so many tools. In the past, I mean, look, this has always happened, right? We know it has, but I think the internet has really aggravated the curiosities.
Mm-hmm.
We know from detectives who do interviews of perpetrators that basically a bad guy will see something slightly deviant and, they have a choice. They can turn back, repent, stop, whatever it is, and let their conscience be their guide. Or more often, though, they keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have to find the next deviant thing and the next deviant thing until they're on a path where there's nothing that will satisfy them but the thing that no one should ever do ever. And that is, abuse of a child.
Only 310 out of every 1,000 sexual assaults are even reported to the police.
I think it's even less than that.
So from your vantage point, from inside the system, what do you think is the single biggest structural failure driving that number of so few people reporting?
I would say our inability to fortify our infrastructure. What we need is all hands on deck. We have got to stop taking the low-hanging fruit, these dope cases, taking up prison space, court time. We have got to address the real problem, because once a person has been a victim of this kind of crime, they're really changed in a way that creates an ongoing harm for society. And we're not using our precious law enforcement resources to their best advantage. And I think we're starting to see that. I hope so anyways. But really, the public has got to take a far more active role in these civic issues at the local level. Mm-hmm. The public is very disconnected from what's going on in courtrooms, even though they come in as jurors.
Right.
And that really needs to stop. Honestly, we need to have our courtrooms live streaming cases.
Interesting.
Even though they're public.
Right.
They're public. I mean, you can
anyone
get a
can go in.
transcript. Yeah.
Right. But nobody does.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. That it's like they're empty courtrooms.
Empty courtrooms. It's like,
Mhm.
it's very disconnected. And,
Mm-hmm.
I want people from the community to sit there and watch a plea where a guy's going down to TDCJ for 28 years for a rock of meth. Meanwhile, a 9-year criminal case with 2 little girls, a continuous sexual abuse case,
Mm-hmm.
it's been sitting around and can't get a jury trial date while the defendant's been on bond.
Yeah. Why is that? What is this disconnect with protecting children?
For one, the defendants are in control. They have all the constitutional protection, and judges are very afraid of the defendants and their lawyers, and whoever screams the loudest gets what they want that day. And it takes a lot of courage to protect children. It shouldn't take an act of Congress, but it seems like that's what it takes.
So your title, Outcry Witness, right here, it comes directly from a legal term.
Yes.
Can you explain what it means in court and how you've expanded it into something much bigger with your book?
An outcry witness is the first adult that a child tells about the truth of what's happened to them. So it's a very, I see it as a sacred service that an adult can do for a child. A lot of times a child will tell another child, who will then tell a teacher or a parent. That person will go to the outcry child and be like, what's going on? And the child will say whatever the thing is. And then that person gets to come into court. And even though it would technically be hearsay, they're able to say the statement that the child made to them under the same sort of exception as medical treatment. You know, the statement is given more credibility inherently because it is a person seeking help and far less likely to fabricate a statement to, you know, for any reason, because you're wanting it to stop. You're wanting to get help.
Right.
And so that person gets to come to court and testify, and they're able to describe the way that the child told them, their body language, whether they used their body to demonstrate, which is important. It goes to show that the child was consistent, you know, not exaggerating. And, you know, it gives the jury another voice to listen to.
So what does this mean as far as titling your book Outcry Witness to you? How is this personally something that made you want to title your book Outcry Witness?
The Outcry Witness, it's just always gotten my attention as such a powerful term. And I think it's so important in 2026 as we're infiltrated with a lack of humanity through AI and disconnection of so many different ways, that we witness each other, that we show up for one another, that we honor the act of disclosure, knowing that we're dealing with a prevalence that is far beyond anything we could have imagined. It's far more likely that if someone takes the space to tell you what happened to them, they're telling the truth. Mm-hmm. I mean, look, like, this is no one's idea of a good time. No one wants to sit around and talk about, you know, their orifices and other people's genitals and, you know, the terror of being a victim before that and everything that it's bringing up, because most people have been a victim more than once, in my opinion. So Outcry Witness is, you know, it's really a call to action for all of us to take that moment and just listen when someone's trying to reach out, because we haven't been. A lot of times,
pay attention.
Yeah, you know, someone will start to try and say something and they'll get shut down. Like, well, are you sure that really happened? It was probably just an accident. Or, oh, that happened to me too, and I got on with my life. There's a lot of ways people are being shut down. That happened to me. It's why I didn't tell until I wrote a book, really. I tried to tell, and I couldn't get any traction with people who really should have cared.
Well, tell me more about that, because you first went to the Dallas area rape crisis. Is that right? Before you went to law enforcement. Before that, did you go to anybody before?
That was the most recent sexual assault that happened to me. And I had told a couple of friends and then decided to make a record through Darcy. And I didn't take it any further than that. I had other fish I had to fry, which, you know, directly brought me to this book. And, you know, the Dallas Area Rape Crisis Center was great. And they didn't pressure me to go to law enforcement. And I wouldn't have wanted to do a criminal case anyways. If I was going to do anything, it would have been civil.
So, but before that, that was your most recent sexual assault that you experienced. This is right before you wrote this book, correct?
Yeah, it was just a couple of years before. It wasn't that long ago. It was a grown man I met on Bumble.
And how does it happen to where you just literally freeze and it's almost a response? Is that because you were victimized before and it is almost like post-traumatic stress has kicked in and you dissociate?
Yes. And putting those pieces together was more important to me than filing a lawsuit or going to the police. I had to understand why I couldn't move, because I was fully sober that time in my sobriety journey. And I was like, how is it that I couldn't fight back? I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything except what he told me to do. And I figured out, oh, that's my programming. I went into fight or flight as I had done before, and, you know, the rest was history.
You weren't complicit. This is not something you wanted.
Yeah.
And did your assailant, did he know? Do you think he knew that you were not participating? This was a one-way street.
I believe so. I know as I was there, I was trying to give nonverbal signals. Like, I remember thinking, you need to look really afraid in your eyes, and then maybe he'll stop. I remember a couple times I objected to certain things, like, ouch, that hurts. Nothing seemed to work. I tried. I was like, I remember just pleading from the inside, like, is there a way that I can get this to stop? And not to mention verbally, I'd said, this is not going to happen. You know, I'm not ready. I want to take things slow. I hadn't even been seeing him that long. And so he knew I was not
willing. And then before that, it was more experiences having to do with alcohol, which many of us understand as far as, especially at a young age, you start drinking. And my question is, when people now drink and you're young and you're drinking, you can't actually say no, but you're not saying yes. Is that sexual abuse?
In the state of Texas now, it is. The Summer Willis Act was passed in the last legislative session, and that excludes intoxication from consent. Whereas when it happened to me, it wouldn't have been a crime, because
back in the day, before this law changed the rules, you could have been passed out drunk. Somebody could have had sex with you and it wouldn't have been considered rape.
Passed out, I don't think, but intoxicated, yeah.
Okay, so as long as you were coherent but intoxicated, maybe didn't even know it happened the next morning because you blacked out, that might be okay, but today it wouldn't be.
Right. Now, like if someone else drugged you, then I think
it should be different.
Yeah, it would be illegal. But if you're drunk at a bar and you've been getting drinks and
what if it was your boyfriend? Like you've been dating someone, he knows you're drunk, he knows you really aren't saying no, but maybe you're not saying yes, maybe you're passed out in bed. Would that be a crime now?
Yes.
Would it have been a crime then?
Again, being passed out, I think probably it would have been a crime, but I don't think law enforcement would have done anything about it. That's the right thing. Is like, is it technically a crime? Maybe, probably. But is anyone going to do anything about it? No.
What's the consequence?
I mean, they've got to deal with the little kids, right? They don't have the bandwidth to deal with college kids. I just had a client, it happened to her in college in Denton, and he got a no bill, and she did everything right.
So you list rage as the very first healing tool. Before EMDR and even therapy. So that's kind of counterintuitive. Why lead with anger or rage?
You got to get it out. You got to, and it validates the injustice of what you have survived.
What are some ways or healthy ways to kind of, I guess, get rid of your rage or get rid of your anger? Like, throw rocks at a fence, or, ice at a fence, I've heard, or, like what truly can encapsulate the amount of rage one would feel to be totally victimized?
I do think screaming helps. Wailing, screaming, gnashing of teeth, going in your closet and just letting out all these guttural sounds, writing in journals, finding music that helps connect you to this rage. It's a part of the grieving process. It's people who are dealing with the death of loved ones also go through rage. And I think it's a major sign if you're feeling that level of anger, then there's something that needs to be healed.
What made you decide to get sober? Did it have anything to do with being victimized before, or was it totally separate from that?
For sure, it had a lot to do with my relationship history. The drunken kind of loop of, being in relationships with another drinker and fights or, not fights, and just this deadness. I just couldn't do it anymore. And the biggest factor was, my mother. My mother died from an overdose involving, many, many years of alcoholism. And I had a moment where I looked in the mirror and I saw her face, and I was like, oh my God, I have two daughters. It was me and my sister growing up. And if I'm at a fork in the road, if I don't move the other direction, they're going to be me and my sister. And so I had to break the generation cycle.
Oh, that's tremendous. How did you do it? Did you do it on your own, or did you go through a process?
I took naltrexone for a couple years. And that is a huge help. I mean, if you just need to stop using the substance, I think naltrexone's great. What I found out later is that, like, you still have to process the funk from the alcohol out of you, taking a pill is great. It'll make you to where you don't have cravings, but it's not going to keep you from it's not going to help you do the work.
So when did you realize that you were a victim of sexual assault? Was it right after it happened, or many, many years or through your career working with others and recognizing who you are prosecuting were, and very similar to what you've experienced?
It was a combination of all three, but there was a moment when I was in therapy. I think I was already in crimes against children. If not, it was right before, when I was in a very harmful relationship with a man who later sexually assaulted me, or maybe he had already done it. And my counselor was like, we kind of had a moment, and I was like, well, yeah, this did happen to me when I was about 19. And she said, huh? And I said, yeah. No, it's not the first time. And so there was that major light bulb. And I had known it. So
you were an adult. You were an attorney,
Mm-hmm.
and this is after having children.
No, this is when I was in my 20s in the DA's office.
Okay.
The first time.
Going through therapy and recognizing that what had happened to you was not okay.
Yeah. When I was 19, so there was 19, 2006, and then 2022. Those are the three formative events that I include in my book.
And why does it seem like if you've been victimized once, it seems to happen multiple times? Is that a pattern that you've seen?
It is, and it's supported by the research. When we're wounded like this, you have an injury. It's like having a broken leg, really, only you don't have a cast. You're just still injured, your personal injury. And you keep trying to heal the injury through doing the same things that caused it. You don't know it's happening. And maybe we'll get to the point now that we have this research and the data and the book and everything to where we'll see when we're in a loop. But most people don't. I didn't. And so I just, kept going back to bars.
Yes.
And, just sort of choosing the same guys and, ended up keep getting hurt. And
almost as if you're trying to tell yourself not to repeat it and you're going to do it differently this time.
Right.
But you ultimately fall into the same trap over and over, reliving the same experience.
Yes. You try and heal the original wound by doing the same actions that caused it, thinking that you can fix it this time.
Right. It makes a lot of sense. So what about children who are abused? Maybe an adult now thinks they may have been abused as a child, but you've heard of dissociating to where sometimes maybe you don't even have childhood memories because they're so painful. How would someone know if maybe things weren't normal, something's off, and maybe they were sexually abused, but they don't actually retain the memory right now? Is there a form of therapy or?
That's a tricky one. I think you can tell by the person's life. There's going to be probably evidence in the person's life, whether if they really think that they were sexually abused as a child and don't remember it. So there will be clues.
Do you think you were sexually abused as a child?
There were things that happened that I still don't remember and don't really care to figure that out.
Right.
I think I'm okay not knowing. What I do remember, I've acknowledged, not really in the book. But there was a bunch of stuff that I outcried that got cut.
And so your dad is legendary, also was a lawyer and had the name Wild Bill. And he's known all over the state of Texas. What was it like growing up being Wild Bill's daughter? And what can you say about your dad?
What a wild childhood I had. I grew up in courthouses. It was really common for me to go to the courthouse with my dad and walk around and sit with him in court, sit with him in trial. He did criminal defense and family law. And so it was a really kind of sad way to grow up because everyone was in so much misery. A guy with an ankle monitor sitting in the lobby drinking a Miller Lite in the middle of the day kind of deal. Family law clients that were, it was rough.
How did he get his nickname?
He got his nickname in the Henry Wade days. He was a prosecutor under Henry Wade, and he did antics. Back before us, I think the menfolk lawyers could do basically anything they wanted in the courtroom. Cigarettes, putting the cigarettes out, in someone's hand. And I think he fired a weapon in the courtroom.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, he did, into the trash can. And then it's staying on a table. He stood up on a table and sang The Gambler. And there's a bunch of stuff like that I've heard over the years that
really did happen.
Yeah, that made
Legendary
him wild.
stories that gave him.
And that doesn't even count the stuff he did on his free time.
So is that why you wanted to become a lawyer, to be like your dad, or something different?
It had to have had something to do with it. I've known since I was really young that I was going to be a courtroom lawyer. And for sure, there came a point where I felt like I wanted to beat him. I wanted to excel.
Did you ever work with your dad?
I did. I worked in his law office starting when I was 13. And, there was a lot of conflict, especially as I got older. He was a really hard person to be around in that context. I mean, it's very stressful. And I think he had survived a lot of physical abuse as a child, and he didn't really have the tools to handle it with, grace all the time.
So do you want to be an author or a lawyer now, or both? Speaking of it being stressful.
Yeah, I would love to be an author. I would love to.
You are an author.
Yeah, I am an author. If your book can just help one person, then it'll be worth it. And I say no. I did not do this to help one person. I can help one person in my law practice.
Absolutely.
I did this to help millions of people.
What would you want your biggest takeaway to be for those out there that might be suffering quietly, not wanting to share what they've been through?
My biggest takeaway would be to understand that being frozen is keeping you from living. Like, you are not living, you're just surviving. And there's so much more out there.
Explain being frozen. Like, what happens? Like, why don't people talk about it? Like, something happened. You think of Epstein. I think you had mentioned this, on social media. Like, why the Epstein victims, didn't share their story. We had the whole Me Too movement, and it took one woman and then the next and the next to finally open up. Like, what happens when you freeze or you just don't tell anyone?
Yeah. Just like we described earlier in my third sexual assault. I mean, you're frozen in the moment, but then you're frozen talking about it. And all of that, refusal to acknowledge what happened to you affects your life in a very real way. Like, we know that survivors of sexual abuse feel despondent, despair, like they don't want to live. Not suicidal, but like it's all pointless. Like there's no point to living. Really have a hard time feeling joy. That affects your parenting relationship with your children. They, are trying to escape, throwing whatever you can at the void.
Or numbing,
drugs, alcohol, pills, whatever. And all of that is just this constant, it's just dealing with the void. And the void is not something that I invented, but it's something that I know well. And that is what's keeping us from living the lives that we're supposed to be living.
Has writing this book changed how you parent your own kids?
Absolutely.
How has it changed it?
I mean, this was like an exorcism. And I'm like a real person now, I laugh at their jokes. I listen to everything they say. I get up in the morning and I'm grateful to see their faces. And
what was it like before that?
It was dark.
You weren't present in the moment. And now you are.
Yeah. I didn't care if I lived or died for a while. And that's a direct result of the injury of being sexually abused.
And is it just shame that is just compounding over and over and not knowing how to kind of process?
I don't know if really anyone knows that. What Bessel van der Kolk and Stephen Porges say, both doctors, they say trauma is like a dart thrown into the purpose of life. So it creates a despair when you've been abused. And I don't know what it's from, but it's, it's a causal relationship.
But on the other side, healing is, how would you describe now this newfound, healing and how you approach life today?
If I had known it could be this much better, I would have done it a long time ago. And I hope that readers take that away is, because we just put it off because you think it's so much worse in your mind to revisit the event, to say what happened about it, to deal with it. So you just keep putting it off. But I think if you know that there's real life on the other side, you'll be more motivated to read the book and get it done.
So who should they go to? Who should the outcry witness be?
I say try and choose someone who does not have a felony or a crime of moral turpitude, just in case they're ever needed to testify in court. And be real careful not to choose someone who's aligned with your perpetrator. So often people will choose, their aunt or, is the person, and then they end up taking up for the perpetrator. Like, oh, well.
What about a teacher? Is that, have you heard teachers?
Teachers are fantastic. They're very commonly outcry witnesses.
Okay.
Because little kids will tell their teachers. It's the only place they have a safe adult. If they're in a home where there's a perpetrator and then another parent who has no choice really but to support the perpetrator.
And for those teachers who become an outcry witness, what do they do next when they hear or they suspect something is going on that shouldn't be going on?
The state of Texas has laws, actually really strict and important laws about reporting child abuse. And if a child tells you what has happened to them, it is not your job to decide if it's true or not. You have to report it. And so there are trainings on the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services website that say they're professional reporters, and then we're all mandatory reporters. I don't think most people know this because the law was changed. Like regular lay people didn't have the duty to report, but now we all do. So if a child, finds you at a baseball game and tells you, you need to call. You have to call the hotline.
Are there signs that you could tell people to look for? Just to be, I almost feel like people aren't curious enough. And that, somebody has behavior that is just not someone who might be, in a healthy home life.
Yeah.
And what are some signs that might take it to the next level? It's not just lack of food or lack of sleep or too much video games, but there's something really sick going on, like maybe getting sexually abused at home.
One of the signs that I've seen for sure is physically making contact with other children in a way that's not friendly or helpful. Touching another child's privates, even if it's not sexual, maybe you're playing a game, like that's a red flag. Hitting someone in the cafeteria is a red flag. Having severe mental health issues, having to go to the nurse a lot. And, I would just say, if your gut's telling you something's not right, you really need to, just keep an eye on this child, because really it does take a village. It really takes other people, other adults looking out for kids to flush this nastiness. What
can parents tell their children, and starting at what age, to let them know that they have a safe place to go to, and what boundaries are appropriate for other people to do or not do?
I made sure to tell my daughters that they are the first line of defense. Probably a couple years ago.
How old are they now?
They're 11 and 9. And I actually was not, one of those parents who talked about parts, and I didn't really have the conversation as much as you would think for someone with my job. But I do remember telling them, hey, look, you're getting to the age where it's pretty likely that if something bad is happening to a child, they're going to tell another child. And you need to know that that's, it's sad, but it's normal. It happens to a lot of kids. This is the data on it. And if that happens, you've got to tell mommy or a teacher, and and then we have a responsibility.
How was your global experience, including your time in Southeast Asia and working with the NGOs? And can you explain what NGOs are?
Yeah, a non-government organization. And that was a really eye-opening experience, because I had come from Collin County, which is state-of-the-art child protection infrastructure, and thought, I was so naive. I was like 30, 31. I thought, let me go over to Indonesia and we'll just set up a multidisciplinary team. All we need is a forensic interviewer and, CAC. And oh my gosh, they don't have 911. They didn't. And
what do you mean they don't have 911?
They don't have 911.
So what do they do if there's an emergency?
Yeah, exactly.
Scream for the neighbor?
It ain't easy. We were working on some models, and the kids, for example, ride on motorbikes most of the time. And so and one of the times the child was transported by car and kept vomiting because the child had not been in a car. And then at the police station, I use that term loosely, there were all these roosters and chickens around. and couldn't get a recording of the child. And there's not a computer that can even take, you take it on your phone, and then what do you do with it? Like the police don't have a way to get the file. So this was all, I guess 2011, but 2012, but still, I mean, we have some work to do in the United States, but we still have infrastructure that has value that we should be very grateful for.
Well, you have built an incredible presence online. Thank you. And it has grown so quickly. Do you think traditional law has been slow to embrace the platforms like social media for sexual abuse and all the topics that you're addressing?
I think it's coming around, but I really think we need some legislative action for it to be viable for most lawyers. Most of the help that people need from me, I really can't give them because there's no way for me to make a living doing it. I could sit on the phone with people all day talking about cases, but, I have to do it for free because, people don't have money. And it would be really helpful if we had a public defender kind of system set up where at minimum, I could bill the county for those consults. Really, without an insurance policy or a deep pocket, the law is not well suited to help survivors on cases like these.
Are you representing people now? Are you playing lawyer? Are you?
I do. I'm
What kind of cases and what kind of clients? Who's your ideal client?
I am really looking at workplaces right now, and I've expanded my lawyer role to consulting for corporations and businesses. What I've learned is that sexual harassment is really bad in workplaces, and there's no protocol to dealing with it. There's HR, and HR tends to make it worse more often than not. And so
How do they make it worse?
Well, they just begin retaliating on the person who is saying what happened to them. They let the perpetrator stay employed. They retaliate on the person who is speaking up, and then that creates a lot of liability for the company. Even though we have caps on pain and suffering damages in Texas, a lot of these are settled pre-litigation for a lot of money.
Does there always have to be physical touch for sexual harassment to be a viable case?
No.
Can it just be language?
Oh, yeah.
Comments?
People writing emails, for sure. And then again, the retaliation is what really gets the companies.
What about someone using just their position of power or authority over someone who's a subordinate?
Yeah.
And making comments. Is that enough for that person to feel unsafe?
Yeah.
Or to feel like if they don't comply or go along with it, they're not going to get the promotion and not excel in their career or move up?
I look at this.
If they don't play along and how to be cool.
Yeah. Workplaces, that's really the next frontier, in my opinion. I think the courtrooms, without some major work, the courtrooms are pretty tapped out. And so I see workplaces as the next frontier for me.
So almost like employment law.
Yeah.
But specifically sexual harassment.
Right.
Okay.
Sexual harassment and retaliation. I like any kind of retaliation kind of case, even if it's, gender discrimination or any protected class a member of a protected class who's been harmed, and then the company starts retaliating. I'm interested in those cases on the employee side, and then on the employer side through prevention. Hiring me is prevention.
Excellent. So you can consult with companies and try to help them insulate from being exposed to someone who might have a tendency of sexual harassment in a workplace.
Right. Well, and to handle the outcries better. Treat people with dignity. My module is called Humanity for the Workplace.
Humanity for the Workplace. I love that. What is next? Are you going to write any more books, do you think? Or are you on a book tour now? How is it going?
We'll see how the summer custody schedule shakes up. I may be driving around, going to bookstores. I was at Barnes & Noble last night, and they had a copy of my book, and I signed it, and they put a sticker on it.
Oh, wow. So where can everybody get your book now? Where is it?
It's at bookstores everywhere, apparently. I was surprised. I went into Barnes & Noble, and they had one. It's on Amazon.
So they don't tell you if you write a book, they're not saying
not really.
Okay, you don't get to find out unless you're there.
I don't guess so. My publisher wrote yesterday and said that my book was number 1 in sociology on Amazon yesterday, and then it's number 32 overall of new releases.
Oh, that is so exciting. So this Who would benefit from your book besides a victim? Who would you say this book is for?
Everybody. I mean, when you have half the population who has, and plus 1 in 6 men who have been surviving contact sexual violence, a parent, a sibling, a friend, everybody needs this book.
So, camps, and have you heard of Kanakuk Camp?
Yes, and I love Elizabeth Phillips. I got to meet her.
Tell me about her. I went to Canacomo Camp, and my friend and I kind of had a little joke that it was Canacult because it is so competitive, but yet like we would, be so fierce on whatever sport game we were playing, and then we're all holding hands praying afterwards. So it was just
the one in Missouri.
Yes, it's a very intense Christian sports camp.
Yeah,
but
Canacult.
Well, we just had the nickname Canacult.
Mm-hmm. Not Colt. I was thinking of the horse.
It was Canacomo. But that's where I went since I was actually the youngest camper there and for many, many, many years. But now with all this news on Kanakuk, I was, I had old sisters, so I didn't have any siblings that were at Kanakuk. But I do know many people that I've grown up with that were sexually abused there, had no idea, and just now really, revealing the truth as adults. Are you a parent that would say, I would not advise camps at all for kids, or is there a way to safely do camp? How would you answer that as far as camp in general? Is it just too risky?
I think a lot of things are very risky. A lot of things that we do for camp, I would say you need to have, an emergency response plan. I think parents send their kids to camp thinking, oh, well, I'm just going to, hang out at the spa or whatever it is you do. Maybe you just work a lot. I think the camps need to have a better way of having kids check in, kids being able to get a hold of their parents really quickly. Kanakuk's case, I mean, based on what I've seen, it seems like the camp was pretty complicit. I don't even know if they would have let a kid use the phone.
It's snail mail only. It was definitely like Fort Knox to get in and get out.
Yeah, no. I mean, really, really risky.
What about sleepovers? Kids sleeping over. Do you get that a lot?
I'm the sleepover house. I tell the parents, I'm like, this is a man-free house. Yes. I got no men who live here, no offense, but I'm sure everyone understands. And, it's a girl-only house, and, you don't have to worry about most things. So I'll let girls come over to my house, but my kids don't sleep over anywhere else.
Have you seen these teachers now having recently, and there's a town, Winsboro, there's been a lot of scandals in Winsboro, and then you've been posting a lot of these small towns.
Yeah.
A lot of them, East Texas and elsewhere, where there have been a lot of coaches and teachers, even impregnating their students. What do you have to say about what you're seeing in the news?
What I have observed is across the board, perpetrators who offend on students are given the option of resigning or being terminated by the school district, which means that they're not going to be arrested. And being arrested is critical if you're a perpetrator, because that's what brings you up on NCIC.
Tell me about that. What's NCIC?
The nationwide database.
Okay.
NCIC, TCIC.
Can any of us get on the database and look up somebody?
No.
Okay.
Only law enforcement has access to it. But if someone's never been arrested, then it shows they have no history.
When in fact they do.
If they're a teacher and they've perped on a kid at school and have been allowed to resign, then they go to another school district, and then you have to wait for the whole thing to play out. And then the same thing happens. They're allowed to resign, and then they go to another school district. And
there's no track record for the school to even find out, unless I guess they could call the prior school and hope that they would reveal. Would they even be allowed to do that?
They could be allowed to do it. Will they? That's why legislature put a law on the books this past session that if the school district has knowledge and they don't act and they let this person remain employed, then they're open for punitive damages.
From whom? The victim?
Yeah, I've got one at an ISD. I'm working with Will Adams on it. Mm-hmm. And it's under the new law. And, my gut tells me this guy has a lot more victims out there.
So there's no immunity when it comes to sexual abuse with a public school, or what would you say?
What I'm finding to be tricky.
Like, how would you prosecute someone in a school for a sexual crime. You know, as opposed to if you get injured at a school, there's really, you know, a lot of protection there to where it doesn't make it, unless you're on a school bus and you have the insurance policy for the bus, you know, some negligence in school, it's really not worth pursuing on a civil side. How would it be different on like a sexual abuse side?
Since the law has changed, if you can prove the gross negligence or that the school knew that the guy was a perpetrator, that's what's so interesting about the Salina case, is why did he get moved from the high school to the junior high? The plaintiff's firm, is including Jack Walker out of East Texas, is alleging...
Yeah, tell us the background on that.
Yeah, well, the two boys outcried that their coach was filming them landscape while they were in the showers. And they thought it was really, you know, fishy, and they reported it and they went to the Children's Advocacy Center and did forensic interviews, and it turns out there was a lot, like 38 victims.
In his phone.
Yeah, from the football team.
And these were middle schoolers.
Law enforcement got his phone, and it turns out he was moved from the high school to the junior high, and that's where the school district's knowledge comes into play. Because, you know, his dad was the coach, and there's a chance that the school district could have known that something was not right, but rather than be protective and, you know, deal with him, they moved him to another school where he then perpetrated on more children.
In the same school district.
Yeah, in the same school district.
All that evidence has come out in discovery?
Well, in discovery, it did not come out in the independent investigation.
Okay.
And that's what we've got to understand with the districts, is that they're really no different from corporations.
Right.
Even though they have an obligation to the taxpayers to protect our kids. They, you know, defendants, you know this, it's the one trick pony playbook. They just, you know, double down, deny, Darvo, and it's just the same tired song and dance, which is really harmful for victims.
So what do you think is going to happen in this case?
I mean, I think probably this plaintiff's team is going to wipe them out. I think it's going to be probably maxing out the policy. I'm sure they might settle, they might take it all the way to trial, because as you know, with new laws, you have to test them out. And I think the way the law is written is you're going to have to probably go into heavy litigation to discover the knowledge the school district has.
So there are 38. Are all 38 victims pursuing?
I think so.
Wow.
I think there's a lot.
So each one of them have a separate case.
And it's Mitch Little, Jack Walker, and Quentin Brogdon. And Mitch Little got the law passed as a state rep.
Okay.
So I love that. You know, he was on Ken Paxton's legal team.
So have people come to you since your book as victims to let you know? Have you become the Outcry Witness?
I've been the Outcry Witness for a lot of people over time. That's one of the reasons why I wrote this book, is I'm like, man, this is not some one-off thing like I thought it was back in 2006, 2007. This is like everybody. Being found because of my book, I have through in the Boy Scouts of America case. So one of the survivor advocates in the Boy Scouts bankruptcy found me on TikTok because of the work that I was doing for my book. And I've since discovered that none of the 82,000 claimants in the Boy Scouts bankruptcy were given any kind of a way to say what happened to them. They had no victim impact statement, no interview, nothing. They're treated like widget claimants being paid a fraction of their case value.
So what do? They just fill out a form of what happened and then wait for a check? And that's pretty much the form of justice from the Boy Scouts?
They're 100% being silenced.
Wow. So nobody gets a voice.
No.
And that's what you're all about, is empowering those to have a voice and making others listen.
Yeah.
Let the public hear it.
Yeah.
And have the assailants exposed, embarrassed, humiliated.
Right.
Not just something that can be, shoved under the, carpet or something to where they just pay a fine and go on and register. Because how many times are we actually looking people up to even know if they've, been accused of a crime or charged? And can you always find out if somebody is?
No. And perpetrators are so good at staying under the radar. I mean, look at Epstein and all his associates. I mean, the fact that Epstein got any, conviction on him is really pretty shocking considering how much influence he had.
Why do you think nobody else is being prosecuted regarding Epstein? Like, what is going on there? Do you think it's a level of national security that, and it's almost, chips that we have that we need to play, and it's not something that needs to be exposed, but it's something that they can use for control?
You mean because of the international...
Whether it's international, whether it's political, high-powered people, and basically it's kind of a bargaining chip that, whether it's the Mossad or the U.S. government, whoever's, behind him is protecting the information so that it can still be used. Because once the bell is rung, it's rung. And there's no longer, any power to the knowledge. But before that, you can use that as leverage really for anything. I mean, of course, that's just a theory. A lot of people call it a conspiracy theory, but, or, on the other hand, I've also heard, well, these are just photos, these are just emails. There's actually no proof. But then you have the victims that come forward and say, this is what happened to me. And I remember it was with this person. We had, a whole series of those tips also that I read through. And I will say, I mean, some of them, you wonder, okay, anybody can call and say something happened. Could you verify that person was on a flight log on the island? Because you also don't want people just, calling, making things up just to get a story out there. So it seems like it would have to be corroborated and proved in some way. Is, a photo of a person on the island along with their story enough to prove that, they were sexually assaulted by a specific person? I don't know. I'm just...
Yeah. So I was talking about this the other day on a couple different interviews. What the DOJ has said is that there's not enough evidence to convict. But they haven't even begun to investigate. My understanding is that I believe these files are full
What does investigation entail? Like, what are they not doing?
Right. So these files are full of reasonable suspicion, which is all that law enforcement needs to open a grand jury investigation.
Reasonable suspicion, is that the same as probable cause or different?
No, it's lower.
Okay.
It's like not using your blinker and the police are, speeding. Blinker's a terrible example. It's enough to get you pulled over by the police.
Okay.
And then, does your car smell of drugs of a certain type? Okay, well, then that's enough to get your car searched. And then probable cause to arrest. So I think there is enough to impanel a grand jury and start doing grand jury subpoenas, grand jury testimony, which will all be secret. And I think the fact that it hasn't happened is because these are all very high profile people with big time lawyers. And I have seen the government back down time and time again in the face of big time lawyers, and perpetrators know how to work the system. It is very heavily weighted towards the benefit of perpetrators. And I just don't think we have a mandate to get to the truth on the Epstein matter.
So all the victims, I mean, it kind of reminds me of Bill Cosby, the whole Me Too movement, to where so many people that were victimized by him said, well, who was going to believe me? It's Bill Cosby.
Yeah.
And, it's Harvey Weinstein. He has, in fact, somebody I went to school with, she has since passed at a very young age, but she was one of Harvey Weinstein's victims, and she came forward publicly. And I think part of it is, like, how do you overcome that, power, the sense of somebody having so much influence that they could destroy you, and you literally don't have anywhere to go. Who's going to believe you? Who can you trust? I guess that was the power behind the Me Too movement, because finally it was forced in numbers. The only way one person against Bill Cosby was not going to be believable. But when you had this many people, there's no way to deny that he was doing something he shouldn't be doing.
Yeah. I say this over and over again. That is our greatest weapon. That's why I really wrote Outcry Witness, is because the more we bring these issues, these perpetrators into the forefront, the more other victims are able to find each other. And every case is stronger when it's more than one victim. And, it's also a much safer place to be as a victim. You have security in your survivor sisters from the same perpetrator.
And perpetrators, I mean, if you are a sexual deviant in this way and you are, sexually perverse and evil, you won't stop. I mean, it seems like this is not something that all of a sudden, it was a one-time moment and it was a lapse in judgment.
No.
Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Sex offender treatment is actually a field. Licensed sex offender treatment providers, LSOTPs, are a real thing. And you have to have the highest licensure in your field, like you have to have an LMSW, and then you have to go on and get your credentials to be an LSOTP. They treat sex offenders and come into court and testify in the punishment phase that the sex offenders, especially with an arousal to prepubescent children, cannot be fixed. Like there's no pill you can give them, there's no treatment protocol that will for sure fix them. And the only way to ensure that they don't hurt more children is to put them in a place where there are no children.
The children are everywhere.
I'm talking about prison.
So it's prison time, but most of them don't always get prison time.
Right? No, it's far too rare.
Right.
It's far too rare. And so in the meantime, you have all these, we have very little data on the perpetrator side of things, but if you consider that 45% of adult women in America have survived contact sexual violence, then what is the inverse number of perpetrators? We've got to take off our race-colored glasses and put our safety first and quit giving everybody the benefit of the doubt and telling ourselves lies like, oh, all people are good. Yeah.
They're not.
You can't take that chance.
So have you seen the movie Nuremberg?
No.
Okay. If you watch that movie, I didn't know. I knew, of course, the Nuremberg trials. These were post-World War II trials. They first of all had to figure out, is there a law that we can establish to hold these, Nazis and those that were, in these camps accountable for these heinous crimes, these war crimes. And once that was established, and then there was a kind of a worldwide trial, they had, I forgot his name, but he was right under Hitler. And of course, if my husband was here, he'd tell you everything about it. He's a great historian. There was somebody in the military who had, I don't know if he had a PhD, if he was just a psychologist, but he was assigned to all of them to study them and to really understand, is this unique to German mind, in this culture, or is this amount of evil, can this happen to anyone, on earth? Is this something that, a human can just become? And ultimately, he was not well received returning back to the U.S. because his assessment was, this is not unique to just being German.
Yeah.
You can become this depraved. Anybody can. And the U.S. did not like hearing that. And he was really, blacklisted. And he eventually took his own life in the same way that the cyanide, So, but it's a great movie. I won't spoil all the parts of it. But I think about that and, have we studied the perpetrators? Like, what is this mind? Is this something like, kind of going on to, who's the black comedian? Who screams and yells? Forgot his name. But anyway, he talks about having a porn addiction. And when you start watching porn, the next thing you do is, it becomes so, dysfunctional in your sex life that you're looking and needing things that are just beyond what, you would ever thought of you would need to get aroused. Is that what happens? Are people born this way and they just, did something happen to them and they just can't get over it? Do we know enough about what causes perpetrators?
We're not even anywhere close. Just the other day, a study came out. I think it surveyed 3,000 or 4,000 human men, and 95% of them admitted to an act of sexual violence. And, 38% said it was just because they were horny. Another percent said it was because, the opportunity was there. It's a really interesting study because so many admitted to it. I've seen one out of Australia where it was a pretty high percentage of college-age guys admitted to sexual violence. And so
seems like there's different grades though. Okay, so
it's key.
So first you have let's take Bill Cosby. He basically has a pattern and he knows how to do it. And he, is drugging somebody's drink, getting them to where they're left unconscious, and then assaulting them. And then they wake up, they don't know what happened, and they leave, right? And he's able to do that over and over and over. So that is like criminal intent. It's, you know, it's planned, it's determined. And then you have those moments where maybe, you know, even, you know, parents with young teens that are just, you know, have really high hormones and they're in a moment and they're not stopping in that moment. They probably should. And, you know, what is consent and what is that line, you know? What would you say as far as like the depraved mind between those two? I mean, you're talking about something, in my opinion, that's just so different. Someone who's, you know, going out with the intent of victimizing a woman as if like it's a notch on a belt, you know, that they can just have a list of victims. And then you have those, you know, that are just young and kind of, you know, reckless.
Yeah. Addressing it. We know from juvenile sex offenders, that's actually one population I think we do know better. And we know that they actually can be rehabilitated to a degree. I've seen these programs through the juvenile justice centers where if you put them in intensive sex offender treatment when they're really young, then they can improve and they can learn basically empathy and how not to offend. But if we don't catch them early enough, then they're going to be a Bill Cosby. Because what we know from the interviews with sex offenders and, you know, what little research there is that they're going to keep crossing that line. Whatever the line of the last thing they did that was deviant and they got away with it, they're going to keep going and going and going. It's just it's like a Pavlov's dog dopamine kind of thing, maybe.
And it's almost like those neural pathways just get reinforced, that is what is arousing them.
Right.
It's, you know, I'm going to take what I'm not supposed to have. Right. And I'm going to take it at that moment. Right. And that thrill is what is driving them to do it over and over again.
Yeah. And that's true in the pornography space, as well as the actual human victim space.
What is your thought on OnlyFans and just that whole wave of women now objectifying themselves for money? And do you think that that's a way for women to empower themselves, or they're just playing into something that is just making a problem exacerbated and worse?
Yeah. OnlyFans, you know, every place I think can be really harmful for women. You know, I think OnlyFans has a lot to do with trafficking and prostitution. And none of these sites that deal with the general public where crimes can happen are acting responsibly.
Right. We really haven't touched on trafficking. I find it just fascinating how prevalent it is worldwide. And how all these women, have you heard of Jocko, who's, his sister was trafficked through, she was, you know, going to be a big singer and promised, you know, some amazing scout was going to make her famous. And then all of a sudden she disappears into Africa for several years. And now he's a huge advocate against trafficking. And he's, you know, been on the news and has a really good program battling this terrible thing. But women that are trafficked, a lot of them do have the ability to leave, but they don't. Yeah. Like, it's not like they're in a cage. Why don't they leave? Like, you know, I've wondered that. Like, you know,
some of them might actually be in cages. I mean, we know that, you know, the human trafficking that's taking place in North America, I mean, they're being put into U-Hauls that walk from the outside. The thing about trafficking is almost every victim of it has been a victim before. And so then you get the freeze response that we were talking about earlier, and they're basically zombies, you know, and infected with being frozen.
Probably drugged.
Yep, drugged, unable to fight. And they get in so deep. I mean, look, if you read Virginia Giuffre's book about the Jeffrey Epstein criminal enterprise, he specifically looked for girls who were on the edge, vulnerable. I mean, they can sense it. They can tell. And they can tell if you've been hurt before when you were younger, as she was between the ages of 7 and 11 by her bio dad and his friend. And so they can tell when you're already broken, and they know to pick that low-hanging fruit. And once you're in it, what are you going to do? Right? You're going to leave with what? They have your passport. With what? Money. You're not allowed to have money. I mean, how are you going to get out? You just can't.
Have you heard about the caves that are connecting, like, museums and people's homes and
No.
okay.
You're telling me there's caves now?
Tons.
Oh my God.
There's lots of different theories that, it's another
they're
city for the
prohibition
government, but it also is a source of trafficking children.
Oh, man.
And some have survived. And there's one who is, always on the run. But she talks about, what is down there, what it smells like, what it looks like. And that is like a whole nother entity. But there are pathways and doors from the Getty Museum and places in New York
That are not part of public transportation.
to traffic these folks.
Okay.
So what about children who are trafficked? You would talk about living in Texas from the border and all the illegal immigrants that have come in. Where are those children? Where do they go? And are they going to be found?
Yeah.
Are these sting operations, is this something I've heard oh, it's in every town. And I, have thought, okay, can I drive around and figure out where these people are?
Yeah. No,
Be the vigilante?
I've thought about getting some night vision goggles and going up to, Texoma Parkway up in Sherman and sitting there in front of all those motels and just seeing, are
wow.
U-Hauls going to pull in with a bunch of people?
Because you would know
Yeah.
where they many times commit these crimes, having prosecuted them. Where do they go?
I had very strong feelings that there was a very high amount of trafficking up in Grayson County. Between the lake and all of the casinos and resorts and all of the sort of, fishing motels and what have you, I just had a very strong instinct that it was happening everywhere up there. The more I learned, the more I thought, Dallas is actually it's too hard because we have all the task forces in Dallas. Mm-hmm. The hotel rooms are more expensive. There's a lot more people who are more likely to see something, say something. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're trafficking, probably y'all out here, off of 30, are probably going to have people more smart enough to get off the radar. Mm-hmm. I would not stay in Dallas if I was trafficking kids.
How can you sense, with your experience, could you tell just by being around someone if they're a pedophile?
I have very, very strong spidey sense. And because of just the way I am, I don't know, people react to me, in certain ways.
I mean, we've seen politicians as pedophiles. Mm-hmm. How it's hard for me to understand how powerful people can be in charge of making really important decisions for the public, but yet be so mentally depraved at the same time. Yeah. So, but you see it all the time, I'm sure.
Yeah. There's no real profile for someone who commits crimes on other people. It's not just one gender, really. It's not just one race. It's not one socioeconomic level. It's really just a matter of access and opportunity. And what's the line? Does that person have the empathy and the decency to stop themselves from doing something if they're presented the opportunity? And, the Eric Swalwell scandal right now, I mean, I've got a lot to say about that. Him and Tony Gonzalez drained that swamp, if that's who we're getting rid of. Those guys were drunk with power, harassing. You know how hard it is to get a job with a congressman? And, they get a job working for Tony Gonzalez and he's asking for nudes. Next thing they know, they're setting themselves on fire in front of their house. I mean, to have that level of power and to behave this way is completely unacceptable. And
it seems so common, though. I mean, you have Anthony Weiner.
It is common.
Anthony Weiner, and then it just, the list goes on. And these are
half.
How do these people not think they're going to get caught? That's what I don't understand. You literally are in the public eye. Everything you do is scrutinized. How are you not going to get caught doing these things?
Well, right now it all depends on the victim saying something and being believed. And they gamble.
Thank God they did.
Yeah, they gamble that they're not going to tell. If they do, no one's going to believe them.
But now we have phones.
Because they have mental health.
But we have phones now. You have the picture of him on the bed making out with the girl. I mean, he's caught.
But look.
How do they not think they're going to get caught?
Maybe last month, there was a bill that went before Congress to release all the records for the Congressional Settlement Slush Fund for sexual harassment cases. That didn't pass. I mean, we need those records. And yes, I am loving Nancy Mace right now, Congresswoman Nancy Mace.
Yes.
Anna Paulina Luna. She's out of Florida, and they are just cracking the whip on these guys, and we need it all day.
We need more women like that, more mothers coming in and standing up for our children and not letting these guys just get away. That's why I just don't understand that they literally think they're not going to get caught or it won't matter. And there is so much ability to catch them now.
Yeah.
And expose it. But there's still cover up. You're right.
And then safety in numbers. As soon as one is brave enough to say something, like you saw this horrible, like Swalwell, she just came out 2 days ago.
Right.
And she wouldn't have probably, she didn't have the cover. Look at Dolores Huerta. She blew the whistle on Cesar Chavez a couple of months ago after other victims had come forward.
Right.
So it really takes the one being super brave, and then the dominoes will fall after that.
And you just keep seeing the perpetrator do it over and over.
Yeah. So it's important, saying what happened to you, saying the truth about it, having your friends know. Maybe you didn't see the news story on, the Cesar Chavez, the first victim. So your friend sees it and says, "Oh my God, remember you said that happened to you?" And they're like, "Oh, well, I can't let her go through it alone. I'm gonna come forward. I'm gonna say the truth."
But that's got to be hard because now you are basically choosing to be, no longer in the private eye. I mean, now you are on public news and on everybody's phone and all over, you're broadcasted. Now you are a name. And so you've given up your privacy. And that takes a lot of courage.
It takes so much courage. But what's the alternative? A bad guy, someone's going to suffer alone and think that they were the only one. Maybe this guy gets to keep all the streets named after him because it's just one victim. It's really easy for any institution to just blow off one victim. But if it's two, if it's three, if it's four, and then Austin removes his name off the street sign.
Right.
And it sends a message to everyone, the little girl at school who's thinking, "Gosh, this coach keeps taking me into the closet."
Exactly.
Nope. All these people are saying it. You know what? It's not so weird anymore. I'm going to say something too.
Right.
That's why victims come forward. It's never for the money. No, because they want to put him in prison.
Well, there's never any money.
There's never any money. There's no upside.
Right.
They do it to protect other people.
Right.
At great cost to
well,
themselves.
Next we'll see perpetrators will start having insurance policies.
Let's
I'm just
hope.
kidding.
Let's hope. Well, there is rape insurance.
There is. Wait, what?
Yeah, hotels have it. It's called, and churches have it. Rape insurance. Little sexual assault.
Like
insurance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so our insurance policy.
So you're telling me
that's my little hobby. I love reading insurance policies.
Is this just private schools and the Catholic Church or all churches?
Most churches have it.
Okay.
Most hotels have it.
And what about private schools?
They have it too. Any place where there are children. Urban Air has it, Main Event has it. It's at least worth, if one of those cases comes across your desk, it's worth taking it and trying to get that policy and figure out if there's coverage.
Right.
So it probably is.
So that actually is really rewarding to hear that there actually could be some money damages that can be received, some punishment that would hurt, their pocket.
Yeah. And now the non-disclosure agreements that typically are in conjunction with the settlements are being outlawed nationally.
Right.
Oh
my gosh, those non-disclosures. I mean, I won't even agree to them on car wrecks and trucking cases. I'm like, I'm sorry, you're not going to keep them from not saying what happened and how much it was. I mean, it's a free country.
It is a free country.
So that's going to be, we're going to take that out of the release. But I mean, when it comes to sexual assault in your story, I hate that they would actually pay you to be quiet. I mean, that just takes all the power away. It's almost worse than just being able to tell your story without, having any money compensated. But
yeah,
so they're being outlawed.
Yeah, nationally. I mentioned Elizabeth Phillips earlier. Her brother Trey was a Kennecott camper who was hurt.
Right.
And so now she's got Trey's law that she's pushing it. It's been passed in several states, but now Ted Cruz is bringing it federally. I said, it's good. It's time for him to redeem himself. Go get it passed.
Yes, let's do it. Come on,
let's let Texas lead on something.
JoDee, thank you so much for writing this book, for coming on the show, talking about it. And let me ask you, do you have hope now?
I do. I have so much hope. And the reason why is because this is the first time, I believe, in humanity's history where we can't all be killed at once. And we're actually able to speak to one another in real time using these incredible tools, which we can either use for good or for evil. And we can say the truth about what's happened to us in a way that our grandmothers and ancestors have not been able to do before. And I think the perpetrator class has a lot to be afraid of, and I think we have a lot to live for.
Well, thank you for empowering. You're empowering victims, you're empowering women, anyone who has experienced terrible trauma, and you're allowing them to have a voice. And that's what this is all about. So thank you for sharing your personal story, because you were the first to make the first step to reveal what you'd been through. So thank you for writing this, and I really hope it touches so many others.
Thank you. Thanks for the great conversation, for having me.